Hey, practice owners. Steve Parker here from The Profitable Dentist. And we're doing a special 3-episode package with our good friend, longtime friend. I don't want to say old friend, Gary, longtime friend, Gary Cady from Next Level Practice. Um, Gary and I were talking, and, we did a series on his $1 Million Dentistry book, like the best book ever written in dentistry. And has actually really helped a lot of practices, a lot of practice owners get out of their own way, get over struggles. And, Gary and I were chatting, and he said, "Hey, do you know I wrote a new book?" And I said, "No, what is it?" And he said, "It's the 90-day practice sale. This is hot off the press. I think there are only two in existence. Gary has one, I have one. You'll be able to get it soon, but I wanted to kind of get a jump on the topic of the book and spend a little time with Gary and help docs who have been in this game, hearing about selling your practice and DSOs. And, it used to be DSOs were the evil empire and nobody wanted them. And then we realized, maybe they do some good stuff. And more importantly, maybe I can be a DSO. So Gary wrote the book, and I wanted to get together, and we decided there's a lot in this book to cover, so we're breaking it into three. Our first episode tonight is Old Transition Models Are Dead. We're going to dig into that and what that means. And if you're a dentist who thought, who graduated from dental school, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever you graduated, you took a job as an associate, that all blew up, or you overpaid for a practice, whatever that terrible experience was, those are gone. Those don't exist. The good news is there are a lot of new ways to run your practice if you decide to be the owner, not an employee. If you decide to be the owner, there are a lot of new ways to do it, and Gary has tapped into all of them and really made a transition with his business and with his consulting and with his life. So does that about sum it up, Gary? Did I cover all the highlights?
Steve, this is like Belushi and Aykroyd again, man. We're coming back to put the damn band back together, and we're going on the road here and bringing the next evolution of dentistry. And thanks for inviting me back. Thanks for having me to talk about this important topic. We always like to be on the forefront of what's happening in dentistry and really take these complexities, these fear-based things that are like so overwhelming to the men and women that do the work chairside every day, because they don't leave dental school prepared to become a successful practice owner in the first place. Imagine that part. Here they are, and that's where my heart has been over the last 30 years. I've been working with dentists, and my compassion and empathy for the men and women who go to dental school and think that they are going to walk out being dentists, and they really have to be practice owners, and that the complexity that brings along with it, and the stress and the overwhelm and the just and dentists have this discourse where it's like, I don't want to go to the dentist on top of that. And then team members are like complaining. And then there's a supply and demand shortage. And then there's inflation. And then it just keeps piling on. And then there's this new conversation called consolidation and DSOs. And that's why I always, my heart is led by the pain that men and women live in dentistry. And I find big time joy, Steve, as you know. I've worked with almost 7,000 dentists now over my career, which is amazing. What a privilege. I remember my first, Dr. Gaben in Caucus, New Jersey, in 1994, something like that. Just amazing. And now to really see how we've evolved, and now we're bringing this education to the men and women that really grapple with running a practice to begin with, and then what's the exit to do that. And I want to highlight something here. I wrote this 90-day practice sale. Even if you're not ready to sell, it's like this will give you a life beyond your wildest dreams if you apply these principles right now. If you're looking to deal with your team, if you're looking to be more profitable, if you're looking to have more time off, these same principles apply whether you're looking to sell or not.
Right. That comes through. And I believe it or not, I read it. And what you do a really good job of bringing it down to the level of a single doc who really just wants to do dentistry, or or sees what's going on down the street.
Yeah.
And, some knucklehead they went to dental school with who, they wouldn't pay him to shovel their driveway. I'm saying that because we got like 100 feet of snow outside here. But suddenly this guy just sold his practice and he left with $20 million valuation.
Yeah.
And they have no idea how that happened. So
Yeah.
what I took away from the book is that it is possible. You don't have to get an MBA to understand how to do this. You don't have to understand super high technical financial things to do it. You just have to start out right. Get your mindset right about your practice if you're the owner, and then do that, as part of your career, as opposed to just being the dentist, showing up every day, doing the dentistry. And then, you get to about 60, 63, 65, say, all right, let's sell it. And today you find out, like your first practice, that's how it got sold. I'll guarantee you.
No doubt.
Today, there are all kinds of models to do that. There are all kinds of pathways. And, fortunately, you've lived them. So I appreciate the reason you wrote the book. And I know you and I have talked, you've coached directly and through Next Level Practice a lot of dentists and a lot of practices, and you've helped them to get to successful. And $1 million dentistry, I mean, it's genius. There's a lot of docs who said, all right, I got my first $1 million, and now I'm on my way to $1.5 million, and now I'm on my way to $1.2 million, and or $1 million or $2 million, and they suddenly don't realize they haven't structured for what they do after all that. And when we were talking about why you wrote the book, that was really the thing that resonated with me. Is, I mean, you've had to have seen that hundreds of times, right? They suddenly got successful and they don't know what to do next.
Exactly. And the thing about this is too, Steve, is there's a lot of myths out there. There's a lot of myths in the space, and like a lot of fear, and like a lot of my colleague friend went into a DSO, and we call that DSO 1.0, where they lost their autonomy, they lost their clinical autonomy, they lost their decision making, and like that shut it down in the mind of that dentist. And so I want to just set some context here, because I'm not a fan. When I started this process out it was about 8 years ago, I was not a fan of DSOs. In fact, there's two things, and you'll laugh at this. There's two things in my career that were not going to change, and I either had to adapt or quit. The first one was the emerging generations of baby boomers and millennials. Like back in the day, you'll remember, like I had seminars, a lot of people know me through the work I did with Invisalign. I did over 100 cities in 3 years, and thousands of people went through that program. And one of the first things back in the day in 2006 was like, my team's on their phone. And like we were grappling with all that. Now it's like, you can see the evolution, obviously, but we had to adapt our approach in engaging the non-loyalists called millennials. It made us better business owners and better at engaging the team in our practice development program. So, I pay attention to the shifts in the industry and then adapt and invent models that speak to the individual, whether it's a patient or a team member, to get them on board, right? And it's all authentic, transparent, completely clear, has integrity as its root foundation. The second thing that happened in my career that it wasn't going to change, and the train has left the building, Steve, is this consolidation. So I did not want it to happen. I was an advocate for the private practitioner. In fact, I had this movement going on against DSOs. And, it's almost like Mother Nature and water and a dam. Like you're not going to hold back that water. And I did everything I could for so many years when I saw this happening until this moment. And I'm more nimble because I can see landscape. That's been my whole career. I see the landscapes, and then I adapt to it, and then I codify it and give it to dentists so that they can capitalize on what's going on. That's been my lane. That's what I've done my whole career. I've always kept people ahead of the curve and then gave them the what to do about it. right? And it made it simple, took the complexity out, it made it simple, made it, heart-centered, meaning where it like it's not about the money, or it's not about the taking and stealing. It's about like caring for all people along the journey. And that's how basically I've been doing this 30 years and did it over 7,000 practices. But here's what happened. 3 of my clients in one day, and I'll never forget, I went home to my wife and I go, honey, I'm scared out of my mind. 3 of my best clients are selling out to DSOs. And she's like, what? And she knows them. She goes, and they came to me and they said, can you help guide me? Because I don't know what to do, but I want to sell. And I then said yes, reluctantly. And I went behind the scenes and I got to see things that I was like, you're losing your autonomy. They're going to strip. They're going to tell you how many crowns to do. They're going to like take your practice and strip it all down. And then you're working in a place that you hate, all that stuff. And it was all real. All that stuff happened, Steve. But the game changer was I got to see that the buyers were changing because there was competition, and it gave the leverage to the private practitioner. And so that changed the game for me. I said, it's like Tai Chi. You know, the concept of Tai Chi where somebody comes and attacks you and you use the force of the Tai Chi, Steve, to use it on the person. And when I got to see that I can help create for our dentists a life beyond their wildest dreams, removing the dread of the downsides of the business side of dentistry, allow them to focus on their dentistry, allow them to take care of their team and take care of their patients, not lose any of their dignity, but have dollars and time. I'm like, I'm all in. And that was the turning point. And we built a whole model to take care of dentists and guide them through this path.
Well, and that's, I think what's always interested me is, and I get a lot of the nasty grams and the nasty emails and a lot of the sad emails that, again, hey, I'm 63 and I'm starting to think about retiring. And, you look under the hood and nobody's going to buy that practice. There are no buyers out there. And, here's a dentist who's been working hard all this time, and suddenly they realize, they have to do something different. And the key thing is it's not a lot different. It's probably things you've done over time. You just didn't realize you kind of have to do it. You've approached your team a certain way. You have to realize that your team is a valuable asset, and in positioning your practice to be able to sell one day, whether it's 30 days from now or 30 years from now. When you do that, the whole thing just works better anyway. And you never knew that's what you needed to do. You were taking more implant courses and you thought that would change it. You'd started to do sedation or Invisalign, and suddenly that was going to change everything. And none of them did. And there are simple reasons why they didn't. You're not working on your business, you're working on your clinical skills. And dental school doesn't teach you that. So like I said, I'm a super fan of the book. We're glad to do this. We're going to promote the heck out of it. We're going to break this down. We sort of, through conversations, we decided there are 3 big chunks. There are 8 chapters in the book. Really well thought out components of what every dentist owner should be thinking about now or doing tomorrow. Gary's going to have an offer here at the end. Stick around on how to get a copy of the book. And again, it is I think what you've done really well is not make it a textbook or, something for an MBA class. You've brought it down to somebody who went to dental school, who's practiced however many years, and doesn't need to learn all these new business concepts. What they need to know is, what should I be doing today? So we kind of broke this down into 3 main sections or segments. I would like to ask anybody in the audience, if you have a question, go ahead and put the question in. We'll get to as many as we can at the end, any that we can't. Gary and his team are always good about following up. No question is a silly question. I know I've been in dental meetings where, Gary, I've been in dental meetings where we talked, the whole thing was about EBITDA. The guy talked for an hour up on stage, and we get to the end, and I said, I go, who understands EBITDA? And, every hand went up. It's a room full of dentists. And I said, anybody want to give like a 30-second explanation of it? And every hand went down. So don't be embarrassed that you don't know, but know that you should know. And that's really what this is about. And Gary makes that easy to do. So
Then if you're selling an individual practice at 200,000, it's just how money works. So the concept is in DSO 3.0 is where you roll. And this came out of, I wanted to control the vision, purpose, and values of what the group stood for. So our DSO 3.0, which is called the Next Level Doctors Group, is our vision is to leave dentistry better than we found it. The purpose behind it is to enhance the quality of people's lives, starting with the dentist, the team, and the patient. And then it's raising the standard of care, raising the standard of self-care, attracting talent. So the next generation of practitioner, look at this, Steve. We understood that if you don't take care of the next generation, get them out of debt, and set them up clinically, you can't replace yourself. So we have an incubator system for associates. These were all the downsides that were not being taken care of in a traditional DSO. So we said, by the way, you and I share Porsches, right? And I just, I wanted to show you my picture. Look I'm proud of this. This is my Porsche.
Worked hard for that, dude.
Was that?
You've worked hard for that, dude.
Thank you. Yeah, I humbly share that.
Yeah.
I humbly share that because I picked it up in Stuttgart and drove it with my wife. We had our second honeymoon. It was delightful. That wouldn't have happened if I wasn't of service to people and I had a dream. And the key thing is, Ferry Porsche, when he created the Porsche, he said, I tried to buy a Porsche, a sports car that met my standards, and I couldn't find one. So I created my own. So we have this, a couple of DSOs that we created. They're called DSOs, but they're really roll-up groups of like-minded men and women who actually care about the patient, the team, and the purpose behind their work, and really have a balance of, removing the downsides of dentistry and adding wherever you're starting from. Like we have rural practices in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and they got 10 times their profit over the evaluation. And I mean, if they sold out as an individual, they would probably get 80% of what they collected. So the gap, and this is why I got into this, the gap between leveraging the assets and working with a trusted person who you can who everything is transparent. Like you're not like waiting to find out if your stock that you bought into this group that they're going to declare and tell you what your stock price is. It's not like that. This is a fully transparent.
We have 3 episodes. This one is Old Transition Models Are Dead. We're going to talk about a few models that used to exist that are gone, but the good news is new ones that have come along. Episode 2 is about valuation. And Gary does a good job of saying you should always understand and know the value of your practice. No matter if you're day one and you just started up, or no matter if you've been doing it 40 years and you're looking for buyers, you should know what the market, how they value your practice and how you can leverage that. The other thing is, if it's too low, the analogy I make is it's a house. You can't always know what your house is worth because your neighbors are selling them. And you think, there are times in my neighborhood, Gary, where people have gotten really good value for their houses. And suddenly Paula wants to do some remodeling. I'm all about that because, I know it's going up. What do they say? Rising tide lifts all ships. So you're in a time now where working the value of your practice, there are a lot of people who can show you how to do it. And Gary's book and Gary's, the things he generously shares at dental meetings, that you walk away thinking, well, that's simple. Why aren't we doing that? That's what helps you with the value of your practice. And then the 3rd episode is going to be transition planning, crafting the sale. So again, whether you're going to sell it in 30 days or 30 years or 5 years or whatever you're going to do, you need to sort of have that in your mind. And that's a good segue into practice models that like I said, your first practice, probably some young associate came out of dental school, looked to be an associate with, we'll call them old doc and new doc. Old doc, who really is struggling to practice wants out, wants a lot of money for a practice who's had declining revenue. The average patient is, 64 years old or something, because that's doc's age. And you used to be able to go to the bank and say, hey, I'd like to borrow, $1 million for that, or $500,000 or whatever. Today, number one, what do they say? Your practice is worth somebody will pay you, and they'll pay you what they can borrow. That model is gone. I literally haven't seen one in a year or two. But that's what most of the docs listening tonight, that's probably how they got into practice. One of those probably blew apart on them, and then they decided to start their own. So that approach is gone. And you've been working with a lot of practices that either start up or practices that exist, and they might be mid-career, and suddenly selling is a good strategy. It's not like selling and getting an RV and going off into the sunset. It's selling and still working. It's selling and being an investor in the new, bigger company. It's selling and sitting on a board. There's a lot of new models. So can you kind of go through a few of those? Especially, I know you've worked with a lot of doctor-owned groups where it's not some MBAs and equity finance people, it's dentists. And kind of explain what some of the new models are, as opposed to just being an associate, overpaying for a practice, and taking 15 years to get out of that expensive debt.
Yeah, I think no matter what, I think one of the key things to take away from what I'm about to share, Steve, is exactly what you said. I want to highlight that part. Whether you're 40, 50, 60, or 70, there's an opportunity for you right here. Because the old model of working your butt off and then selling at the end is done. The opportunity right now is there's three ways to make money in dentistry: salary, profit, and equity. Salary is you as an associate. Profit is you're running a successful business. Equity, you sell, and this is the key, a portion of your asset off so that you have leverage, that you have the leverage. When you sell 100%, what happens is that they have all the leverage. That's what changed in the industry. Very important distinction. We are now in DSO 3.0. So DSO 1.0 is the original six, Heartland, you know them. It was that's the original ones, and then they've had to evolve because the competition came in. Then there's a direct to DSO sale, the MB2s, that kind of it's more of a transaction. DSO 3.0 is you're a part of a group of like-minded people that come together for the greater good. Because here's the key thing to understand about consolidation and the value to the private practitioner that you can't get if you're doing as an individual is the aggregate of all the dollars. Your dollars have more value when you're a part of a greater group. So the profit, if you're doing $1 million, and by the way, we now have, I created a group of men and women who have $1 million practices that couldn't qualify for traditional DSOs. We put them together. Let's say you have $1 million practice, you're doing 200 in EBITDA. We put them together. If you have 10 of those practices at 200, now you got $2 million that you're offering somebody, which has a higher dollar payout. You're on the board. You see what's happening. It's run by dentists. And that is very different than some corporate guy in Dallas saying, here's how it's going to go. We're going to recapitalize in 3 to 5 years. That doesn't happen. And then your stock, and then you're sitting there with them holding dollars of your practice that's left. And there's no bad thing here, but there's better ones for the right type of practitioner. So that's what this position is. And I gave you one of them, and because I can talk to you about 2 or 3 of them here, Steve, but I think that I wanted to paint that picture that this is the empowered practice opportunity. This is empowered practitioner opportunity. This is not, blindly go into a relationship and hope that it turns out. It's not that.
Well, it's also not being an employee now. And, if I did an article on DSOs 10 years ago, I mean, the irony of all this is, and I've told this before, Dr. Rick Workman, who started Heartland, started it on the patio of our Destin Spring Break seminar.
It's
And he
amazing.
said, and he's repeated this many, many times. And he says, I looked out across a room of 1,200 dentists who hated running their practice, but they loved doing the dentistry.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't know dentistry was a backup career for him. He
Mhm.
was his father was a big farmer, very nice
Yep.
man. And he said, Rick, farming's hard. You need to get a backup plan. So he went to dental school. And he liked it, but he liked the business of dentistry more. And
Yep.
so he literally sat there with a doc, had the conversation, and he said, how about this? We're close enough. I'll do your billing. I'll help you with the business part of it, the staff. My team loves it. I like it. You do the dentistry and I'll take X%. And that was practice number one. And it works
Yep.
well. They added another and another and another. And for a long time, that's all that existed.
Yep.
They're like the Walmart of dentistry. That's all
E-
that existed. Well, now there's all flavors and they're all I'm particularly fond of, we talked before, are dentist owned groups. So
Yep.
be 3 offices and 3 docs get together. It could be 30, 40, 50. But
Mhm.
what one of the things in the book that was really interesting about it is how you put it together. There are shared strengths that, if you get together with, say, 10 docs in your area and you all put this together, or the groups you put together, somebody is strong, somebody loves marketing, somebody loves the operations part, somebody, they kind of like being the person who handles the conflict,
Yep.
staff problems. There's somebody who's very strategic. And very rarely is one person who went to dental school, spent 4 years with a clinical education, came out, started a business. If there are 50 things they need to be good at to run the business, they're good at 2. Uh,
Exactly.
they suck at 5, and the others they do because they want, they have to, and they really don't get around to. But when you come together, which again really came through in the book, is you build value in that organization. And
Exactly.
buyers can look at it and say, all right, we know exactly what we're getting. And the cool thing is it's not one company that comes to buy you whenever you decide. It's 2 or 3 or 4. There's nothing better than a bidding war on your practice.
Well,
And
we have a whole systematic process around this where we put it out to 1,800 PE firms and DSOs, and then they have to fight to get on. We get it down to 6. Then they have to fly in and present to the entire group. And then now, see, what we do is we put our dentists in the buyer's seat, not the seller's seat, Steve.
yeah,
And it's key to note, we have our own roll-up group. We also are helping to facilitate if somebody wants to have, if they have 5 docs, 10 docs, help them facilitate their group, and we become the quarterback for getting that done for them as well, which is a really, this way they don't have to reinvent the wheel. I want to highlight. I think I want to highlight a few things here, Steve, that you're bringing up, if I may, to just
Mhm.
really deepen the conversation. I'm going to go to my, remember John Madden, man? John Madden. I'm going to go to the telestrator here, because I love me my John Madden,
I
Steve.
was
So,
I was a big John Madden guy back when the
all
Raiders,
right,
when
I
they
know.
were.
The good news is this is relative to all generations, because like my son plays Madden, so he knows who John Madden is too. I played John Madden football against him and I beat him, by the way. Not the least bit competitive
Yeah.
here. I think it's important to identify for our doctors a couple things. There's like I want to identify that, let's say this is a beach, right? There's the landlubbers. These are the people that are sitting back on the beach. They're not wanting to dive into the water. They're evaluating, and that's cool. If you're there, that's great. There's the I call them the wave runners. They most of these guys have transacted already. They like see what the next wave is, and they want to transact, and they have done that. Then there's the third practitioner that has the North Star, and they're thinking about it, and they're deliberate, and they are like really thinking it through and figuring it out. And so identify where you're starting from, and wherever you're starting from is fine, right? That's key to note in our discussion today. The second thing I want to bring forth is there's 3 ways to generate revenue and reduce the burden and the dread of going into your office every day. The first is you transact under this model at 60% of your EBITDA. So you get a multiple for 60% of your practice. You stay on, ideally, is a 3-year term. So you stay on as a practitioner for 3 years. You're getting 30% of your dentistry. By the way, Steve, this is equal to or greater than the profit of the average dentist that we've transacted. So
Okay.
you end up making more money by selling off. And by the way, this number, this is what you would have sold to like the old school model of an associate. This 60%. So you're now playing with the house's money. So look what's happening. The reason why this works, and I want to explain the money part because most people don't get that. The 60% that you sell off, you still own 40%. This amount is equal to or greater than what you would sell into the old school associate model, right? At like 80 to 100% of collections. That's what this amount equals. Then you're cranking equal to or greater than profit. So you're also getting the 40% that's left over. So you're getting your dentistry at 30%, no labs taken out, plus the 40% profit, less some management fees. Then the third one, and this is where generational wealth, and we're going to deepen generational wealth as we go through in our trilogy here. This is where you have the option in something called a recapitalization, where when the group sells to a bigger group. So like we started out with 15 practices, we now are selling to 100 practices. It's a $1 billion valuation, let's say. Now the practitioners that we have in this group, they can put in all their money and sell that off and get their portion of the 40%. They can reinvest it, or they can stop working after their 3 years and take 100% of their dollars off the table. So you're now leveraging an investment. It's almost like the best way to explain this, Steve, is instead of being in the stock market, investing in someone else's stock that you don't know what they're doing and you hope it turns out, to being a part of a group that's fully transparent, fully board membered, fully voting rights, that you get to say and direct how the future of this organization goes with like-minded people. You get to meet all the people that you're doing business with next to you, and you get to say how it goes. So
Right.
why wouldn't I step in and guide doctors to a solution like this? That's why I changed my whole tune. And that's key to understanding this first part of the old transition models. It's actually, this is the diamond age for a transaction where we thought it was, we're going to lose everything to PE firms. It's amazing.
Well, the great thing is you also can, you just said it, you can start this anytime, whether it's your first day in practice, whether it's your last day in practice, but you have to have that, you have to approach it with that attitude and that mindset. And you and I have both seen docs. I mean, I had a doc I was telling you beforehand who's 65-ish and emailed me, and he said they still all want a video. Like, do you sell a DVD course on blank? And it's such obscure things, but that's the dentist mindset. I even had, we did a lot of great work during COVID. We brought a lot of docs together and helped them get through some really tough times. But it started because I would get emails from doctors who said, "Hey, do you have a CD course on how to manage through a pandemic?" Well, good grief. I mean, I would have recorded it in 1918, the last one that we had, but that's the mindset. And no, you don't. Business is hard, and curveballs come at you, and pandemics come at you, and suddenly this guy emailed me this past week. He had broke his hip, and his wife's got to go back to work. He's way out in rural Connecticut. How many associates coming out of dental school want to suddenly move 100 miles from any city, work in a practice that has had declining revenue, and now the doc that everybody loves isn't going to be there for a year or two? That's what comes out. That's the curveball that hits you in the head, and suddenly, you've got to do something with your practice now. So back to the book and the philosophy, always be ready. Start out with the idea that you're ready, always be ready, and then you get those choices. You're not at the mercy of, this doctor, after, good grief, 40 years, he can't sell it. He's not going to find anybody to associate with. He's going to watch his 40 years of work just evaporate. That's what the old models were that we didn't want to talk about. That's why 95% of dentists couldn't retire financially, according to the American Dental Association, couldn't retire financially at age 65. So what you're doing is reframing it and saying, listen, doc, wherever you are, you have time. You can, you got to, what do they say? The proverb, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. This is your step. So in the interest of time, I wanted to make sure, number one, and again, stick around. Gary's going to tell you how to get the brand new book. The first episode here, I think, is about getting your mindset in that if you haven't thought about it, if you're coming to your practice every day, trying to make it through, trying to make next year a little bit better than last year, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, there's a different way to come into your practice every day, and it's with that exit mindset. It's with that, what am I building and how am I going to get out of it? No different than building a house and saying, who's going to buy this thing when we want to move? You make conscious decisions about adding on. I had a guy in my neighborhood, Gary, loved cars, built a 5-car garage. He could not sell that house. You know why? People don't want a 5-car garage. He's got to wait for somebody to come along that has 5 cars. And it was beautiful, and it stored his collection well. But that narrows it down to a very unique buyer, and a lot of dentists do that. They think they do it clinically, and they haven't built value in the practice. They built value in their clinical skills, and they're retiring. So I think we did a really good job. Any other models that you've seen that are I think the beauty is doctor-owned groups, whatever size they may be. Sole practitioners are still out there, but you still have to be profitable at some point if you ever want to get out of dentistry alive and retire. But any new, anything that you see that may be kind of on the horizon that's interesting that listeners should know about?
Yeah, I think I want to talk about the mindset model for our listeners to look at, and I'm going to share my screen again. And it's really we're going to move toward something called. Let me make sure it's up here. One second. Here we go. The model I want to identify with here is something called the Valley of Avoidance.
Okay.
Let's say you're here. You started your practice here, and you've gotten your practice to here. Let's just call it a $1 million practice, right? Now, all of a sudden, you have this opportunity all up in here, right? But you have all these landmines. Like, what are my options? What the heck is EBITDA? I haven't even started my thought of how to exit. My team is not fully up to par. My systems, I don't know if anybody would value this because I'm in a rural area. What we do is we help build this bridge because these are all myths. These are myths. Here's the thing I want to say, Steve, on the mindset model. No matter where you're starting from or no matter what you have, if you have a dental license and you have patients and you have a practice, that is an asset. How much is it valued? Can you increase it? Can you decrease it? You don't know those things because that's all in the valley of what we call avoidance. And the silent look, I'm all about zero suffering and chronic joy. I used to have chronic suffering and zero joy. I used to live like that. And it was only because I avoided things. This bridge is what I want to introduce to our viewers tonight. You have an opportunity to get on a call with my exit whisperer. Her name is Ava. And Ava sits down in a very non-judgmental, sits there, and she has a big listening. And I trained her many, many years. She's a world-class listener. and she knows the options for a dentist. So, you might never have told your story in a way that to a person that just really cares and a person that really wants to understand to give you guidance. Now, we might be able to help you. If we can't help you, then someone else, she will guide you to wherever the next step is, that one step in a journey of 1,000 miles you were talking about. And it's done in a non-judgmental way. It's done in a compassionate way. And, a lot of people, Steve, I found, and I was in this place, we think we live in shame and guilt about where we are. We think we should have more money, more savings, more this, more that. We don't listen from that. We listen from, where are you starting from? What's happened and where do you want to go? And then we help you guide. And this is the bridge that we help you move across so that you can go from here, where you are, across the bridge up here in a step-by-step fashion that you get to choose 100% of the way. So there's no force, there's no, obligation, there's none of that shit. I like saying shit because I'm getting serious now, because here's what I want to talk about, Steve. I want to talk about breaking the avoidance. Like, don't sit there suffering. Don't sit there in silence. I'm talking to you right now because I was that guy. And it took, I'm going to tell you right now, 17 years ago, I had my first wake-up call. My wife said, you don't have to quit drinking, but you can stay here. I'm 17 years sober. My son is off the autism spectrum, and he's at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism speaking on and calling D1 baseball, basketball, and football games. And we almost went to the college final. That's nuts. And my son's calling these games on student radio. This kid couldn't speak, but it was because we had to look in the mirror and take responsibility. That's turning point number one. Turning point number two came at the pandemic. I'm riding to my office at Rockefeller Center, Steve. All of a sudden, I'm lifted in the air. I'm like, what the hell just happened? I'm on a bike, and I got thrown in the air, and I realized I just got hit by a car, and I'm flying through the air on 57th and Broadway in New York City, and I landed on my feet. I had 2 broken ribs. My wife went home. It was my fault. I was overworking. I had a meeting I was listening to on the bike, Steve. You and I rode on bikes through the city.
We did, yeah.
I took you through them. But guess what? That was before I got hit on one of those, and no helmet, and I survived. And all I could think of was like, God, please don't have this car run over me. Okay, that's number 2. Now, number 3, 6 weeks ago, I'm out here in Arizona, living my best life, going on mountain biking. All of a sudden, I'm on my bike, Steve, and then my Apple Watch is ringing. I wake up and I go, where am I? It's the Scottsdale Fire Department saying, are you okay? My Apple Watch saved my life. They said, we're going to send a drone to find you. They sent a drone, motorcycles, 4 runners, gets me to the hospital, broken femur, shattered. My right hip replacement of 20 years ago shattered through my femur. They have to redo my whole hip, and I have 3 butterfly things broken. I'm still walking on a cane. This is 6 weeks later. This is no BS. Okay. And I'm shouting after I came out of the hospital. This is my first go right now, Steve. And I'm like, you can tell my passion, because I know there's my brothers and sisters sitting watching this damn thing tonight and going, that was a nice conversation to have. And what I'm telling you is, you don't know when the next shit is going to happen. And you don't know circumstances that you can count on. Life is going to happen. When you take action, Steve, I'm sitting and I had one job: getting healthy. My money was handled. My team was handled. Everything was taken care of. I was out of the middle of everything. I love what I do. I get to do this because I choose to do it. That's what I want for all the men and women out there. I sit on a pile of money. I have money coming in every month, and I get to do this because I freaking love to do it. And I love to help men and women in dentistry have it all.
Well, you're right. I remember texting, when I first texted you. I happened to be in Germany, and I passed a sign that said Stuttgart, and I said, hey, Gary, here we are. And, it was like, oh, that's great. And then suddenly I found out you have this whole emergency thing. And yes, it just happens out of the blue, out of nowhere. And you think you're prepared, and, you may be or may not be. But I would suspect that the vast majority of practice owning dentists who listen to this right now are not prepared the way they think. Now suddenly a spouse or partners or whoever has to figure out how to sell a practice. Or like, my buddy in Connecticut, great guy, but suddenly out of he had all kinds of plans. He had his retirement figured out. Gary, he'd been shopping for motorhomes because they were going to retire. Now his wife, who's a nurse, has to go back to work. The practice and we've had a couple conversations in between, but his thought, he said, well, I'll get through this and then I'll get back to work and you won't. And what if you don't? So there are a lot of ways to structure that. The beauty of dentistry is those exist now. They didn't exist 20 or 25 years ago. There was one way to get in and out of dentistry, and that's what he's living. So I think that's what's great about this particular episode is just understanding that you have options and take them. Don't wait. You can't wait until after a bike wreck and then say, "Oh, hang on." Whether you think I have that up on every office in our offices here, and that is exactly right. You approach things and think, I can't do this. I'll figure it out when I get there, and it's just bad strategy. So, couple of things. Number one, our next episode, which I encourage everybody who started here and said, "Okay, I buy it." These two guys, they've been this a long time. They literally do it firsthand. They're not talking about, stuff they read in a couple articles. They've done it. Number two is valuation models. And we've got down here, EBITDA is the measure of value. What is it and why you must know it and how to manage it every day. So whether dentists know what EBITDA is or not, you have to. If you go to try and sell your practice and say, "Hey, I do sedation and I do a lot of implants and I do all these things," nobody cares. No buyers care anymore. Or a buyer who does care, who's another dentist, can't get the money to buy your practice.
Well, and I want to highlight something here. I got to interrupt real quick, just so people know. If you're a highly specialized dentist that's doing sedation, implants, it's hard to replace you. So while your lifestyle business is paying you a lot of money, selling that without tweaking a few things is going to be very, very difficult because you're irreplaceable. And so that's part of packaging your practice for sale if you have that going on. So you don't want to miss our next practice webinar on practice valuation and how to strategize it in preparation for sale.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I sold a business many years ago, and a telecom infrastructure business, and they wanted me to stay 7 years, and I wanted to stay 7 minutes. There's a reason you're selling your business, and we settled on 3 years, and that's what we did, and it worked out well. In dentistry, that's the other part that goes south. So you buy some doc's practice, they lose 50% of their patient base because they like the doc and they came in, he was just here 6 months ago when I got my teeth cleaned. Now he's gone or she's gone, and 30 or 75% of the staff leaves because they liked old Dr. Joe. And, so suddenly you just borrowed a lot of money to buy something that just lost half its revenue and most of its team. That's the model that thank goodness, honestly, in my opinion, is dead. So number two, we're going to talk about valuation. What's your practice worth right now? And if you're happy with that, great, don't do a thing. But if you're not happy with that, here are some things you can do. And I know you've got some that you'll talk about where you've taken some practices from hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars. And that's kind of where, while Ava's the exit whisperer, Gary's sort of the collections whisperer. And it doesn't mean a lot. It's not buying a new machine. It's not hiring a bunch of people. It's already hidden in your practice. And we'll probably cover the lost revenue locator, which is one of my all-time favorite things. It's what should your practice be producing. So episode 2 is that. And episode 3 is transition planning. Again, whether it's 30 minutes or 30 years from now, you should always have that plan in mind, even if it's going to change. Doesn't matter. but have that plan in mind and manage to that. So every decision you make runs through a filter of, okay, how does it help the value of my practice? Every team member you bring on runs through your mental filter of, okay, how does that impact the value of my practice and my transition plan? So I'm pretty excited about those. So if somebody wants to get the book, how do they do that? And I like your new you can do a lot of things with that, Gary. And so here 7 weeks ago, if I said, "Hey, what's a good device to help me walk if I break my hip?" You're going to say, "I don't know. I don't need to care about it." Today,
Exactly.
you
Uh,
you do.
this has been my best friend, and to be able to walk, I had to learn how to rewalk. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember my first 7 days after my surgery, I couldn't walk a step. I had to be carried with a belt and two people. I literally were on those parallel bars, and they had this exoskeleton that they wrapped me in that like reteaches people how to walk. Like I was in this Ritz-Carlton rehab. It was amazing. And it's amazing what the technology they have today. But like, I'll never forget, and it moved me to tears, taking my first step. And in my wildest dreams, Steve, you know me, I'm an active guy. I mean, I'm climbing
Right.
mountains, I'm riding bikes, I race bikes. I go to Europe. I mean, this is what I love to do. And I closed that chapter. I gave away all my bikes. They're all gifted, donated to good places. And it's time for me to open up a new chapter. And I'm going to do exactly that. Getting hit by a car and then getting, saved by a drone and almost medevaced out. These guys walked me out for 2 miles. My wife waited for me for 4 hours to get out of the desert. And I was in surgery for 5 hours, and then she was told I would be in there for 2. Could you imagine the trauma of all this stuff?
Mhm.
It's
Out of the
not.
blue. Out of the blue. Yeah.
And I was on my bike and went on that trail 1,000 times, and I was awoken by my Apple Watch. By the way, I've sold thousands of Apple Watches, by the
I
way.
bet.
Because you really need them, because when you don't, you just never know. And
Mm.
so my point is, I'm so grateful to have this platform to really gift the men and women that work their asses off to keep our communities healthy and our teams taken care of. And they're usually taken care of last. And the discourse of bullshit that's landed on these men and women is unacceptable to me. Like that
Yeah.
what was that damn movie? I walked out of that movie. It was in Vegas, and they were making fun of Stu, and he said, I'm a doctor," and they go, "You're not a Hangover."
Over. Yeah.
I walked out of that movie back in the day, and I was like, on my watch, I am not going to have the men and women that I know who they are and what they have to go through and what they have to manage on a day-to-day basis to
Right.
live in that world. And that has been my mantra for 30 years. It's been the joy of my life. And now I get to do it just because I get to do it. And my biggest joy is to take somebody that didn't have hope, didn't have promise, thought it was all over, and take them and give them some new awarenesses so that they can see. I'm just giving them a new glasses to see through, because when you're in your practice, Steve, you can't see the opportunities because you don't know what is out there seeking what you have. That's just the gap. And here's what most dentists are living in. My friend got taken advantage of, so I'm not going down that road. And I'm basically just going to fall dead over my last patient. That's what I hear a lot. A lot of things happening now. There's two types of practitioners that are left that haven't transacted. The ones that both of them need and want handholding, but they don't always want to ask for help. Asking for help post-pandemic is a strength, not a weakness. And there's two types of thinkers. There's the very deliberate, methodical thinkers that have to have all the details. And we understand that. And then there's the humanist doctor that cares deeply about the people that are around them and the impact that this thing's going to have. We tend to both of those things, Steve. So that removes the barriers for people to step into this where, we hear a lot when you sell to a DSO or like that, they treated me like a pack. My practice was a pack of gum. And, I spent my whole career building this thing, and I have a lot of, relationship capital here and a lot of experiences that I don't just want to go to some factory. And I really appreciate that. And that's what we care deeply about. And that's what this whole mission and this platform is about. And thank you for inviting me to bring
Oh,
this message out to doctors, because I I think there's needless suffering that's going on, and there's big time opportunity, and you don't know unless you don't know. So jump on Ava's call, and she'll listen to your story, and she'll tell you where to go. And
Well, a lot of
yeah,
docs, they think it's over their head. And honestly, a lot of it is over their head. You don't
Yeah.
need an MBA to be successful in this. And don't believe that. Or don't get on to a webinar with, a bunch of lawyers and accountants and investment brokers who tell you how to sell your practice, and it's all over your head. That's not what this is. So
if you have a heart and you have the heart of a dentist and you care deeply, that's what this conversation's about.
yeah, it's very possible for anybody who's listening. So two quick things. One is the book. We're gonna put a link in where you can download your own copy. I would encourage it. It is a great read. It's short. It's to the point. It does include a lot of meat that we're not able to cover. This would be I don't know how long it would take me to read it, but this would
It's
be
a one flight book. We call it a one flight book.
yeah,
So
yeah,
in one flight, you'll be able to read that book.
The-
It's written on like a 6th grade level, not to diminish the intelligence of the reader, but just to have you get through it, because people don't want to read books. We have audio as well, but it's like just grab it and knock it out on a flight and you're done, and then you'll be wiser than the average person. That's how fast it goes.
Yeah. And I think also you don't feel overwhelmed in these conversations at dental meetings or with somebody who says, hey, this guy exited, and had $20 million. And you think, okay, there's more to it than that. And, here's the thing, Gary, he might have exited with $20 million and he should have gotten 30.
Exactly.
So, and the
Or
second,
he had debt of 1999.
right. You can't even buy that new RV. The other thing is, we're going to put a link in also to Ava, the exit whisperer I just learned a few minutes ago. Does she know that, or do you just make that up?
No. I mean, dude, we spend countless hours training and developing her. She's brilliant. She has a lot more patience to listen than I do. And she's like, I listen for 2 seconds and I'm like, go do this. Like, she really takes the time, and it's just she's the right person for that position.
She's been with you a long time, and the other thing is, I think she's also been through a lot with $1 million dentistry and building single practices to then groups to where it is now. So she also has kind of gone through that journey of the industry, like a lot of docs. So we're going to put both of those links in. I would encourage you strongly to take advantage of those. Number 2, I would strongly encourage you to show up for number 2, valuation models for your practice. What's your practice worth now? And number 3 is crafting a sale. When you're ready to say, okay, what would it look like if I did it tomorrow? Or what would it look like 30 years from now? Our episode number 3 gets into kind of the nuts and bolts of it. So I think, and that, again, that's really covered in the book. So get the book. Anything else we didn't cover about like transition or about practices and practice structures and old transition models that are dead?
Yeah. Steve, one thing I think this is what I want to end on. Your organization at the Profitable Dentist, started years ago, and you had a vision for what was possible for dentists, and you provide a platform for education in a way that allows dentists to get beyond where they could get on their own. And I just wanted to say thank you for like your platform, for how you approach it, the value you put out into our world of dentistry, because it's like so often it gets stepped over, but like when we're in our businesses, we miss out on like the impact we're making, and you make an extraordinary impact, the way you bring stories alive, the way you help people. And I just wanted to say thank you for who you are and what you provide in the world of dentistry and the difference you've made in our industry. So thank you for that.
Well, I very much appreciate that. It's intentional. We do it, I'm like you. I'm at a point in life where I don't have to do this, but I have a lot of dentists who are friends. We go to a lot of meetings. We travel a lot. Everybody we know is a dentist, and they're sole practice owners. And, it's funny because at some point in our relationship, I'm going to get a text or a call and let's go to lunch. And they say, I'm thinking about, I'm getting there because, we're the same vintage. I need to retire. And there are times when I have to have very, very difficult conversations with very good friends that you know, you 5 years ago when you should have started and you'd be here. And they find out that they've worked really hard and now they've got a 3 or 4 or 5 year journey, or, they should have started. And the idea that you put it into 90 days just to get your head right, get your structure right, get your what you need to know right is fantastic and very helpful. So thank you. And I love the way we do it together. We've had a lot of good times.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve. And thanks for everybody for being here tonight. And I hope we made a difference for you.
Practice owners, thanks for listening in. Again, Gary Katie's from Next Level Practice, 90-day practice sale. Click the link, get the book. Click the link. And if you have any questions at all, I see we have some questions here. They'll get answered in person. If you didn't put something in and you're laying in bed tonight thinking, should I do this? And tomorrow morning you say yes, click and talk to Ava the practice or the exit whisperer, and at least get the conversation started. Next Level is very generous with the time to work with docs who really, might be in a spot that they find themselves in and think it's hopeless, but it's not. So, or they've missed the game, it's over. They missed the merger movement, or they missed the DSO, or they missed the whatever. No, you haven't. You have plenty of time to get in on it. And, from what I've seen, most people are happier. Most docs are happier that they at least understand it and got into it the right way. So, Gary, good to see you. Can't wait to get together for episode number 2. And practice owners, if you have any questions, you can always know where to contact me, steve@theprofitabledentist.com. Click the links. Until next time, Gary, thanks, buddy, and we'll see you then.